Have you ever wondered who laid the groundwork for the modern world? Who wrote the first lines of code long before computers existed? Or who mapped the stars before the telescope was a household name? Today, we journey back in time to the Islamic Golden Age, a period of breathtaking innovation and discovery. We are unveiling the stories of 10 remarkable Muslim scientists whose genius shaped our reality in ways you might never have imagined. From algebra to surgery, their legacy is all around us. So get ready to have your mind blown. Our story begins in 9th century Baghdad with a name that echoes through the halls of mathematics, Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. This Persian scholar wasn't just good with numbers. He revolutionized them. He wrote a groundbreaking book, Al-Kitab al-Mukhtasar fi Hisab al-Jabr wal-Muqabala, which translates to the compendious book on calculation by completion and balancing. It is from the term algebra in this title that we get the word we all know, and perhaps struggled with in school, algebra, but Al-Khwarizmi's work was more than just a textbook. He introduced systematic methods for solving linear and quadratic equations, essentially creating a new language for problem solving. It's this very language that forms the backbone of modern computer programming and algorithms. Every time you use a search engine, navigate with GPS, or even just use a calculator, you are tapping into a system whose origins trace back to Al-Khwarizmi's brilliant mind. He truly is the father of algebra. Next, we meet a man whose influence on medicine was so profound he was known as the doctor of all doctors. His name was Ibn Sina, or Avicenna as he was known in the West. This Persian polymath was a true genius, mastering philosophy, astronomy, and most famously, medicine. His monumental work, The Canon of Medicine, was an encyclopedia of all known medical knowledge at the time. It was so comprehensive, so detailed, and so far ahead of its time that it became the standard medical textbook in Europe for over 600 years. Imagine, for 6 centuries, doctors from Paris to Padua were learning their craft from his words. Ibn Sina was the first to describe the contagious nature of diseases like tuberculosis, to understand how illnesses spread through water and soil, and to provide detailed anatomical charts of the human body. He pioneered clinical trials and evidence-based medicine, principles that are the bedrock of medical practice today. Now let's talk about how we see the world, literally. Long before Isaac Newton, there was a man who unraveled the mysteries of light and vision. His name was Ibn al-Haytham, or al-Hasan in Latin. He was born in Basra, in what is now Iraq, and his work in optics was nothing short of revolutionary. At the time, brilliant minds like Euclid and Ptolemy believed that our eyes emitted rays to see objects. Ibn al-Haytham challenged this long-held theory. Through meticulous experiments, he proved that vision occurs because light reflects off objects and enters the eye. He demonstrated that light travels in straight lines, and in doing so, he invented the world's first camera obscura. This dark room was a simple device that projected an image onto a surface, and it became the direct ancestor of the modern camera. He didn't just explain sight. He gave us a new way to capture it. His scientific method, based on experimentation and observation, set a new standard for research that would inspire scientists for centuries to come. Our journey continues with another medical giant, Al-Razi, or Rhazes. This Persian physician was a true pioneer, not just in treating the body but also the mind. He was the first to identify and differentiate between smallpox and measles, a critical distinction that saved countless lives. But his contributions went even further. Al-Razi was a master chemist, credited with the discovery of alcohol and its use as an antiseptic. Think about that, the simple act of disinfecting a wound, a cornerstone of modern hygiene, has its roots in his laboratory. He was also one of the first physicians to write extensively about mental health, advocating for compassionate care for patients with mental illnesses at a time when they were often shunned. He established one of the first dedicated psychiatric wards in a Baghdad hospital, treating mental health as a medical condition, not a curse. Al-Razi's holistic approach to medicine was truly centuries ahead of its time. From medicine, we turn to the very elements that make up our world. Meet Jabir ibn Hayyan, known in Europe as Geber. The undisputed father of chemistry, working in the 8th century, he transformed alchemy from a mystical art into an experimental science. He was the first to introduce a systematic, empirical approach to chemistry. His labs were filled with beakers and flasks where he developed and perfected processes we still use today: distillation, crystallization, filtration, and sublimation. He discovered and synthesized numerous acids, including sulfuric and nitric acid, fundamentally changing our understanding of chemical reactions. Jabir believed that everything could be understood through measurement and experimentation. He meticulously recorded his methods and findings, laying the foundation for the modern scientific method. Every chemist in a lab coat today owes a debt of gratitude to this medieval pioneer. Now imagine measuring the size of the entire planet with nothing more than sticks, shadows, and trigonometry. That's exactly what Al-Biruni did in the 11th century. This incredible polymath was a master of many fields: mathematics, astronomy, geography, and history. To calculate the Earth's circumference, he developed a complex trigonometric formula. He climbed a mountain of a known height, measured the angle of the horizon, and crunched the numbers. His result was astonishingly accurate, off by less than 1% of the true value. This was centuries before satellites and modern technology. Al-Biruni was also a cultural anthropologist, writing detailed accounts of the customs and religions of India. His intellectual curiosity was boundless, and his rigorous, data-driven approach made him one of the most brilliant scientific minds of his era. Fast forward to the 16th century, a time when Europe was celebrating figures like Galileo, but in Istanbul, another astronomical genius was making waves. His name was Taqi al-Din. He persuaded the Ottoman Sultan to fund one of the world's most advanced observatories. It was a state-of-the-art facility, rivaling the famous observatory of Tycho Brahe in Europe. Taqi al-Din and his team built incredibly precise astronomical instruments, mapping the stars with unparalleled accuracy. But his genius wasn't limited to the cosmos. He was also a brilliant inventor, designing sophisticated mechanical clocks, water pumps, and even a primitive steam turbine, an early steam engine concept that foreshadowed the Industrial Revolution by over 200 years. Sadly, his observatory was short-lived, but his legacy as a visionary inventor and astronomer endures. Let's travel to medieval Andalusia in modern-day Spain to meet a man who revolutionized the operating room: Al-Zahrawi, the father of modern surgery. For over 50 years, he worked as a court physician and surgeon, and he poured all his experience into a 30-volume medical encyclopedia called Kitab al-Tasrif. The most famous volume was on surgery, a text so detailed and practical that it was used in European medical schools for 500 years. Al-Zahrawi was a master craftsman, designing over 200 surgical instruments. He invented the surgical forceps, the scalpel, the bone saw, and surgical needles. He was the first to use catgut for internal stitches, a material that dissolves naturally in the body. His detailed descriptions of procedures, from setting fractures to performing caesarean sections, elevated surgery from a brutal trade to a refined medical science. Many of his tools and techniques are still recognizable in operating rooms today. You might know the name Omar Khayyam for his beautiful poetry, especially the Rubaiyat, but this Persian poet was also a mathematical and astronomical titan. While his verses contemplated life and love, his mind grappled with the complex movements of the heavens. He was commissioned to reform the Persian calendar, and the result was the Jalali calendar. It was a solar calendar of breathtaking accuracy, even more precise than the Gregorian calendar that the Western world would adopt centuries later. The Jalali calendar has an error of just one day every 3,770 years, while the Gregorian calendar is off by a day every 3,330 years. Khayyam also made significant contributions to algebra, working on the solution of cubic equations. He was a perfect example of how art and science can flourish in the same brilliant mind. Our final scientist is Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, a 13th century Persian scholar whose work on planetary motion directly influenced one of the most famous scientific revolutions in history. Al-Tusi developed a mathematical concept known as the Tusi couple, a model that explains the linear motion of a celestial body as a sum of two circular motions. This ingenious device allowed him to create more accurate models of planetary orbits that didn't rely on some of the flawed concepts used by the ancient Greeks. Decades later, Nicolaus Copernicus, the man credited with proposing a sun-centered universe, used a model mathematically identical to the Tusi couple in his own groundbreaking work. Al-Tusi also built the magnificent Merighi Observatory, a scientific institution that became a center for astronomical research, attracting scholars from across the known world, from the equations of algebra to the tools of a surgeon, from the camera in your pocket to the calendar on your wall. The legacy of these 10 Muslim scientists is woven into the fabric of our daily lives. They were pioneers driven by a belief that seeking knowledge was a sacred duty. In the Islamic Golden Age, faith and science were not seen as adversaries, but as two wings that allowed humanity to soar to new heights of understanding. They built upon the knowledge of the Greeks and Romans and in turn passed the torch of discovery to the European Renaissance and beyond. Their stories remind us that genius has no single culture or creed, and that the quest for knowledge is a journey we all share. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey through history. If you enjoyed this video and want to discover more hidden stories that shaped our world, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you next time.